The reef floor looks calm from a distance, a mosaic of coral heads and sand ripples lit by filtered sunlight, but at closer range it is carved into a battlefield of property lines. Every crevice, every shadowed hole, every abandoned shell is claimed, contested, or defended with a seriousness that would embarrass human landlords. Down here, survival is inseparable from address, and for one of the reef's smallest residents, a single burrow is not just shelter, but an empire. The mantis shrimp lives low and tight against the reef, hugging the substrate, rarely straying far from the opening it has excavated or stolen. This hole is everything. It is refuge from predators that cruise above, a launch point for ambushes, a pantry stocked with broken shells and half-eaten prey, and a vantage point from which the shrimp reads the reef like a tactical map. Lose the hole, and the mantis shrimp loses leverage, safety, and future meals in one stroke. Burrows on coral reefs are not randomly chosen. A good mantis shrimp burrow has structure, visibility, and defensibility. Many species remodel abandoned worm tubes or cavities left behind by dead coral, reinforcing the walls with rubble and sealing weak points with fragments of shell. The entrance is often narrow, forcing intruders to approach head-on, while the interior widens just enough to allow the shrimp to turn, brace, and strike. This architecture is not accidental. It reflects millions of years of selection favoring individuals who could defend limited space in an environment where exposure means death. Reef predators hunt visually, scanning for movement and soft bodies. A mantis shrimp outside its hole is a brightly colored announcement of vulnerability. Inside its burrow, it becomes something else entirely, an armored ambusher with the advantage of cover. Territoriality in mantis shrimp is not a personality quirk. It is an economic necessity driven by the reef's geometry. Food resources are patchy, and hunting in open water exposes small animals to overwhelming risk. By anchoring themselves to a defensible location, mantis shrimp convert space into survival. From the mouth of the burrow, they can strike passing prey, retreat instantly if threatened, and monitor neighbors who might attempt to steal what they have built. These neighbors are often other mantis shrimp, and disputes between them are neither casual nor symbolic. When two individuals want the same hole, the conflict escalates quickly because there is no compromise solution. One shrimp keeps the real estate, the other leaves or dies. What makes these confrontations extraordinary is not just their intensity, but the weapon each shrimp brings into the fight. The mantis shrimp's raptorial appendages are among the most specialized striking tools in the animal kingdom. Depending on the species, these limbs are shaped either as sharpened spears or as thickened clubs, each adapted to a different combat strategy. The so-called smashers wield bulbous calcified clubs capable of delivering blows with astonishing speed and force. When folded beneath the body, the appendages are locked under tension by a spring-like mechanism in the exoskeleton. Muscles load energy into this system slowly, storing power until the latch releases. When it does, the strike unfolds faster than the nervous system can consciously control, a mechanical release rather than a muscular push. The impact is violent enough to crack snail shells, fracture crab carapaces, and disable prey in a single hit. At the scale of the mantis shrimp, this is equivalent to carrying a handheld demolition tool. The strike is not just fast, it creates physical effects in the surrounding water. As the club accelerates, it generates cavitation bubbles, pockets of vapor that collapse a fraction of a second later, releasing additional energy in the form of shock waves and flashes of light. Even when the club misses its target, the collapse of these bubbles can still stun or damage nearby organisms. This means the mantis shrimp does not need perfect accuracy to end a fight. The environment itself becomes part of the weapon. In territorial disputes, however, the goal is often not to strike at all. Actual combat is costly, even for a shrimp armed like this. A damaged appendage compromises future hunting and defense, and regeneration takes time and energy. Instead, mantis shrimp rely heavily on intimidation, posture, and display to resolve conflicts before contact occurs. When a rival approaches a burrow, the resident shrimp emerges just far enough to be seen. The body lifts, the antennae flare, and the raptorial appendages unfold in a deliberate, threatening presentation. The shrimp may rock side to side or perform rapid movements meant to signal readiness and strength. These displays are not random. They convey information about size, weapon condition, and confidence, allowing opponents to assess whether escalation is worth the risk. Confidence matters here more than raw size. A mantis shrimp that hesitates advertises weakness. One that holds its ground, displays clean, intact appendages, and maintains orientation toward the intruder often wins without striking. In some species, rivals engage in ritualized contests where they take turns delivering measured blows against each other's armored tails, effectively testing weapon durability and endurance. These exchanges can last minutes, a prolonged evaluation rather than a sudden brawl. The moment one shrimp retreats, the conflict ends. The victor keeps the whole. The loser survives, but must search for a new address in a reef already crowded with owners who will not welcome it. This behavior reflects a broader truth about reef ecosystems. Violence is expensive, and evolution favors strategies that minimize unnecessary damage. The mantis shrimp's fearlessness is not recklessness. It is a calculated posture backed by real capability. Its confidence is earned through anatomy, biomechanics, and ecological positioning. Unlike many small reef animals that rely on camouflage or flight, the mantis shrimp commits to confrontation because its weapon allows it to control outcomes at close range. This changes how it interacts with the environment. It does not need to flee constantly. It can afford to be visible, to patrol the perimeter of its territory, to challenge intruders rather than avoid them. Underlying this behavior is a sensory system that supports precision and situational awareness. Mantis shrimp possess some of the most complex visual systems known, with eyes capable of detecting polarized light and a broad range of wavelengths. While the exact processing mechanisms differ from human vision, this sensory input allows them to track movement, recognize rivals, and align strikes with extraordinary accuracy. In the context of territorial defense, this means a mantis shrimp can detect subtle shifts in posture or approach angle, responding before an intruder closes the distance. The reef is a visually noisy place, full of moving shadows and drifting particles. To survive here, a defender must separate threat from background, and mantis shrimp do this with ruthless efficiency. The burrow itself amplifies these advantages. By positioning the body just inside the entrance, the shrimp limits attack vectors while maintaining a clear view of the outside world. Predators approaching from above are forced into a narrow line of attack, while competitors on the substrate must approach head-on. This geometry favors a weapon designed for frontal strikes. The mantis shrimp does not chase. It waits. The reef brings challenges to its doorstep, and it answers them on its own terms. What emerges from this system is a paradoxical creature, small, exposed, brightly colored, yet functionally untouchable within its domain. Fish learn quickly to avoid the distinctive shape and movement of mantis shrimp near burrow entrances. Crabs probing for shelter often lose limbs or lives for their curiosity. Even larger animals treat these holes with caution, recognizing that something inside has the capacity to inflict disproportionate harm. This reputation spreads across the reef not through communication, but through experience. Survivors remember. The reef adjusts its behavior around the shrimp's presence. From an evolutionary perspective, this is what success looks like at small scales. The mantis shrimp has not grown larger or faster than its predators. It has not developed venom or invisibility. Instead, it has specialized, committing to a narrow but devastating niche, the close-range enforcer of reef real estate. By pairing a defensible home with an unmatched strike, it transforms vulnerability into dominance. The reef is full of teeth, but teeth require proximity and commitment. The mantis shrimp ends fights before they fully begin, using posture, threat, and the implied promise of catastrophic force. This strategy reveals something fundamental about how ecosystems function. Power is relative, not absolute. Dominance does not always belong to the largest jaws or the fastest swimmers. It belongs to the organisms that align their tools with their environment most effectively. On coral reefs, space is currency, and the mantis shrimp is rich in leverage. Its burrow is a fortress scaled to its body, its weapon tuned to the physics of water, its behavior shaped by the cost of exposure. Everything about it points toward a single truth. Survival is not about size, but about control. As the sun shifts and shadows stretch across the reef, the mantis shrimp retreats slightly into its hole, antennae still probing the water, eyes tracking movement. The battlefield quiets, but the tension never disappears. Somewhere nearby, another shrimp searches for shelter, another crab tests its luck, another fish cruises too close to the wrong opening. On reefs, wars are constant, but they are not always fought with open mouths and visible blood. Sometimes they are fought with posture, with architecture, with the silent certainty that crossing a line will end badly. Reef conflicts are often imagined as contests between giants, jaws against jaws, speed against speed. The mantis shrimp rewrites that narrative entirely. Here, power comes wrapped in a few inches of chitin and muscle, anchored to a hole in the reef, wielding a hammer where others carry teeth. In this world, dominance does not roar. It waits, coiled just inside the entrance, daring anything foolish enough to challenge a creature that knows exactly what it can do. At first glance, the reef clownfish looks like an animated mistake that wandered out of a children's book and into a battlefield. Bright orange body, thick white bands edged in black, a face that seems permanently surprised. It moves in short, twitchy bursts, never far from the soft, waving tentacles of its sea anemone. For exactly 2 seconds, it reads as harmless. Then something larger drifts too close, and the illusion collapses. The clownfish launches forward without hesitation, a flash of color detonating from the anemone's center like a warning flare. It does not posture or circle. It charges. Mouth open, body stiff. It snaps repeatedly at the intruder's face and fins, striking again and again in rapid succession. The target is often many times larger, sometimes a grazing butterfly fish, sometimes a curious damselfish, occasionally something with teeth that could swallow the clownfish whole. None of that matters. The clownfish does not assess odds in the way humans imagine. This is not bravery. This is ownership enforcement. To understand why such a small fish behaves like a territorial tyrant, the camera has to stop following size and start following stakes. The sea anemone is not decoration. It is shelter, nursery, and insurance policy rolled into one. The clownfish's entire life revolves around this living fortress, and everything that threatens access to it threatens survival itself. Unlike most reef fish, clownfish do not roam widely. They anchor themselves to a single anemone, sometimes for their entire adult lives. Lose that anemone, and the clownfish does not simply relocate. It enters a dangerous limbo where shelter is scarce, predators are abundant, and social status collapses overnight. The anemone is lethal to almost everything else. Its tentacles are lined with stinging cells capable of paralyzing or killing fish that brush against them. Clownfish are immune, protected by a specialized mucus layer that prevents the stings from firing properly. This biochemical shield is not innate at birth. Juvenile clownfish must acclimate gradually, touching the anemone cautiously until their skin chemistry adjusts. Once established, the relationship becomes permanent. The anemone offers protection, while the clownfish provides services in return, driving away predators, cleaning debris, and even fertilizing the anemone with waste nutrients. This is mutualism sharpened into exclusivity. Exclusivity breeds aggression. The anemone is a limited resource, and it cannot support unlimited residents. A single anemone hosts a strict social hierarchy, typically dominated by a breeding pair and a small number of non-breeding subordinates. The hierarchy is enforced constantly, not through negotiation, but through harassment. Dominant individuals chase, nip, and intimidate lower-ranking fish to suppress growth and reproductive development. In clownfish society, size equals rank, and rank equals survival. Grow too large without permission and you are evicted. Lose your place and you lose access to the anemone. The reef does not forgive that mistake. This internal violence mirrors the clownfish's external behavior. Any outsider approaching the anemone is treated as a potential usurper or threat. The clownfish does not wait to see intent. It assumes the worst and responds immediately. The attacks are not designed to kill. They are designed to annoy, distract, and escalate perceived risk. Rapid bites target sensitive areas like eyes and fins, forcing intruders to make a cost-benefit calculation. The intruder may be larger, stronger, and faster, but it is not invested. It does not need this anemone. The clownfish does. That imbalance drives the outcome. From an ecological perspective, this strategy is brutally effective. Most reef fish operate under a constant calculus of energy efficiency. Injuries invite infection, slow swimming, and death by predation. Even a minor wound can be fatal over time. When a clownfish attacks relentlessly, it signals a willingness to escalate beyond what the intruder considers worthwhile. The result is predictable. The intruder leaves. The clownfish wins without needing superior strength. It weaponizes inconvenience and persistence, a strategy common among animals defending high-value territory. The comedy of the situation lasts only until the pattern becomes clear. This is not a quirky exception. It is a system. The clownfish behaves like a bouncer because it occupies a doorway that cannot be compromised. The anemone's tentacles are both shield and boundary line. The clownfish positions itself just outside them, close enough to retreat instantly if a counterattack comes. This geometry matters. Larger fish cannot approach the anemone without risking stings, and they cannot strike the clownfish effectively without entering that danger zone. The clownfish knows this instinctively. Its aggression is calibrated to the physics of its environment. This behavior also shapes the surrounding reef community. Fish learn to recognize active clownfish territories and avoid them. Grazers detour. Predators glance and move on. Over time, the anemone becomes a small exclusion zone, a patch of reef where certain species simply do not linger. This alters local grazing patterns and microhabitats, influencing algal growth and invertebrate distribution. The clownfish is not just defending a home, it is reshaping the immediate ecosystem through behavioral dominance. The hierarchy inside the anemone reinforces this intensity. Clownfish are sequential hermaphrodites, meaning the dominant individual in the group is female and the second largest is male. If the female dies, the male changes sex and the next subordinate matures into the breeding male role. This system depends on strict size control. Aggression maintains order. Subordinates are constantly reminded of their place through chasing and nipping. It looks excessive, but it prevents constant challenges that would destabilize the group. Stability here is survival. Chaos means exposure. This internal policing bleeds outward. A fish that grows up in an environment where aggression maintains structure does not hesitate to use it elsewhere. The clownfish's boldness is not a personality trait. It is training. From early life, these fish learn that retreat leads to loss, while confrontation preserves access to resources. Over evolutionary time, individuals willing to attack larger intruders were more likely to keep their anemone, reproduce, and pass on those tendencies. Fearless clownfish left descendants. Timid ones disappeared. There is also a sensory component to this behavior that often goes unnoticed. Clownfish possess acute vision tuned to reef lighting conditions. They detect movement quickly and respond almost reflexively. When something enters their defended zone, the response is immediate. There is no delay, no exploratory circling. The attack happens before the intruder has time to interpret the situation. This preemptive strike is critical. It prevents the intruder from settling, inspecting, or testing boundaries. The message is delivered instantly. This place is occupied and the occupant is hostile. Occasionally, the system fails. Predators too large or too hungry ignore the harassment. In those moments, the clownfish retreats into the anemone, disappearing among the tentacles while the predator backs off or suffers the consequences. This retreat is not defeat. It is the final line of defense, one that relies on chemistry rather than courage. The clownfish does not need to win every confrontation. It only needs to survive long enough for the intruder to leave. Most do. From the outside, it is tempting to frame this as comic overconfidence. A tiny fish attacking giants looks absurd, but absurdity is a human projection. On the reef, outcomes matter more than appearances. The clownfish survives because it understands ownership at a level many larger animals do not. Size provides potential. Territory provides certainty. The clownfish invests everything in the one thing it cannot afford to lose, and defends it accordingly. This pattern echoes across ecosystems. Animals that anchor themselves to fixed resources tend to evolve aggressive defense strategies, while roamers rely on avoidance and mobility. The clownfish is firmly in the former category. Its world is small, but within that world it is absolute. The anemone is not just home, it is leverage. It allows a small body to punch far above its weight by exploiting environmental hazards and psychological deterrence. As the reef light shifts and currents change, the clownfish resumes its tight orbit around the anemone, darting in and out of the tentacles with practiced ease. It looks calm again, almost playful, until another shadow crosses the boundary. Then the switch flips instantly, and the bouncer is back on duty, enforcing rules that are older than the reef itself. Reef ecosystems are often narrated as arenas of brute force, where the biggest mouths dominate the food web. The clownfish exposes a different truth. Control does not always come from size or speed. It comes from commitment. When everything you need exists in one place, you defend that place with a ferocity that makes predators reconsider their priorities. On coral reefs, dominance is not measured in length or mass, it is measured in who gets to stay. And in that accounting, the clownfish proves a lesson that applies far beyond the anemone's reach. Reef size does not matter. Ownership does. A moray eel in its crevice looks like a mistake frozen mid-motion, a body folded into angles that seem incompatible with flesh. Only the head is visible at first, wedged between coral and rock, jaws opening and closing in a steady rhythm that reads as a warning to anything watching. The teeth are exposed constantly, long and recurved, gleaming against dark gums. To human eyes, it looks like aggression waiting to happen, a predator panting in anticipation. The reef, however, knows better. This is not threat breathing. This is respiration. Moray eels lack the ability to pump water over their gills the way most fish do by opening and closing their mouths while swimming. Instead, they rely on buccal pumping, drawing water in through the mouth and pushing it across the gills while remaining stationary. The motion is mechanical, necessary, and constant. The open mouth is not a warning. It is maintenance. Yet evolution rarely wastes opportunities, and what began as a respiratory requirement has become an unmistakable signal. The exposed teeth advertise danger whether the eel intends it or not. The message is received. Morays are creatures of confinement. Their bodies are elongated, muscular, and scaleless, perfectly suited for life inside the reef rather than above it. They spend most of their time threaded through crevices, holes, and tunnels where larger predators cannot follow. The reef is not just habitat, it is armor. Every crack and cavity becomes a defensive extension of the eel's body, shaping how it hunts, feeds, and fights. Close quarters define everything about a moray's strategy. Unlike open water predators that rely on speed and pursuit, morays operate in environments where visibility is limited and escape routes are narrow. Their prey often has only one direction to flee, and that direction is frequently blocked by rock. In these spaces, the moray does not need to overpower with size or momentum. It needs control. Control of angles, control of leverage, and control of the exit. When a moray strikes, it does not lunge into open water unless necessary. It bites and holds. The teeth are not designed to slice or tear cleanly. They are designed to grip. Once embedded, they resist withdrawal, anchoring prey in place. At this point, the moray's body becomes the primary weapon. It twists, coils, and braces against the reef, using the surrounding structure as leverage to overpower struggling prey. The environment becomes part of the fight. Coral heads serve as fulcrums. Rock edges become anchors. The eel pulls, rotates, and pins with deliberate force. This method is brutally effective in confined spaces. Prey cannot generate the momentum needed to break free, and predators attempting to intervene face the same limitations. Even larger animals hesitate to engage a moray in its own crevice. There is no room to maneuver, no clean angle of attack. A bite delivered in this environment cannot be easily countered. Once committed, the moray is difficult to disengage without injury. One of the most remarkable adaptations supporting this strategy lies hidden inside the moray's skull. Unlike most fish, Morays possess a second set of jaws, pharyngeal jaws, that extend forward from the throat during feeding. When the primary jaws seize prey, these secondary jaws shoot forward, latch onto the victim, and pull it deeper into the throat. This mechanism compensates for the lack of suction feeding in tight spaces, where expanding the mouth cavity is impractical. It also reinforces the moray's grip, ensuring that once prey is captured, escape is unlikely. This feeding system is not fast in the cinematic sense. It is decisive. The moray does not snap and release. It commits. This commitment shapes how other reef inhabitants interact with it. Fish learn quickly that probing a moray's crevice is a gamble with poor odds. Even a failed attack can result in injury that compromises future survival. The reef operates on memory. Survivors remember which holes bite back. Morays are not indiscriminate killers. They conserve energy carefully, striking when opportunity aligns with advantage. Their sense of smell is highly developed, allowing them to detect prey hidden in the reef or injured nearby. Vision plays a lesser role. In the dim interiors of crevices, chemical cues matter more than sight. The eel reads the reef through scent trails and vibrations, responding to disturbances long before prey realizes it has been detected. Territoriality among morays varies by species and habitat, but competition for shelter is real. A good crevice offers protection from predators, proximity to prey routes, and favorable water flow for respiration. When two morays contest the same space, the conflict is not theatrical. It is physical and immediate. Biting, twisting, and grappling occur within inches of rock, bodies pressing against stone as each eel attempts to force the other out. There is no chasing. There is no retreat path that does not involve turning one's back. The winner is often the individual that can maintain grip while exerting pressure in the most constrained angles. In these encounters, the reef again becomes a participant. The eel that positions itself with better bracing points gains leverage. A tail wrapped around a coral spur can translate body strength into forward force. A head wedged tightly between rocks resists displacement. The fight is not about raw power alone. It is about using architecture. Morays are not just predators. They are engineers of force within confined geometry. The constant opening and closing of the mouth during respiration reinforces this dominance, even outside active combat. To other animals, the motion looks like readiness, like a threat held perpetually at the edge of action. Whether or not this interpretation is intentional, it shapes behavior around the moray. Fish approaching too closely often veer away at the last moment, deterred by the visual of exposed teeth. The moray benefits regardless of intent. Its biology broadcasts warning without effort. Despite their fearsome reputation, morays occupy a precise ecological role. They regulate populations of reef fish and invertebrates that use crevices for shelter, preventing overcrowding and overgrazing. By targeting individuals that venture into tight spaces, morays exert pressure on prey behavior, influencing how fish use the reef's structure. This creates cascading effects, altering movement patterns and habitat use across the community. Morays also participate in rare cooperative hunting behaviors with other predators, such as groupers. In these interactions, the grouper signals the moray to flush prey from crevices, while the grouper waits outside to intercept escape attempts. The moray does not chase prey into open water, and the grouper cannot access tight holes. Together, they cover each other's weaknesses. Even here, the moray's strength remains close quarters control. It drives prey out not by pursuit, but by making the interior space untenable. What makes morays especially effective in combat is their refusal to disengage once committed. Many predators rely on quick strikes and retreat if resistance is high. Morays do the opposite. They hold, twist, and persist, confident that the environment favors them. This persistence increases risk, but it also increases payoff. In a reef where injuries can be fatal, ending a struggle decisively matters. As daylight shifts and the reef settles into quieter rhythms, morays remain where they are, heads protruding from holes like living traps. The mouth continues its steady motion, drawing water, pushing it across gills, maintaining life. Nothing about the scene suggests movement, yet everything about it signals control. The crevice is claimed. The doorway is guarded. On coral reefs, combat does not always involve speed or spectacle. Often it is decided in inches, in the narrow spaces where escape options vanish and leverage matters more than size. The moray eel understands this better than most. It does not dominate the reef by roaming it. It dominates by owning the entrances, the tight corridors where bodies meet stone and commitment outweighs hesitation. In these environments, fights are rarely won by who is biggest or fastest. They are won by who controls the doorway. The sea anemone does not announce itself as a weapon. At first glance, it appears passive, almost decorative, a soft crown of tentacles anchored to the reef like a misplaced bouquet. The tentacles sway gently with the current, bending and curling as if responding to the water's touch rather than resisting it. Their movement is slow, rhythmic, hypnotic. Fish pass nearby without obvious alarm, and algae grow undisturbed on the surrounding rock. Nothing about the anemone suggests aggression. That impression lasts only until something brushes against it. The moment of contact is invisible to the naked eye, but decisive at every biological scale that matters. Each tentacle is armed with thousands of microscopic stinging cells called nematocysts, compressed harpoons coiled under tension and primed to fire. When triggered by touch or chemical cues, they discharge faster than most mechanical devices humans have ever built, injecting venom directly into the tissue of the intruder. For small fish and invertebrates, the effect is immediate paralysis or death. For larger animals, it is pain, irritation, and risk. The anemone does not need to pursue or overpower. It only needs to be touched once. This is the anemone's entire combat philosophy. It does not move toward threats. It does not chase prey. It turns space itself into a liability. The reef around an anemone becomes a calculated danger zone, where proximity carries cost and hesitation invites injury. In an ecosystem defined by constant motion, the anemone survives by staying still and letting others make mistakes. Anemones are members of an ancient lineage of cnidarians, a group that includes jellyfish and corals. They lack centralized brains, bones, and even true organs in the way vertebrates possess them. Instead, they are built around a decentralized nerve net and a body plan optimized for chemical warfare. Their tentacles are extensions of a simple cylindrical body anchored to the substrate by a muscular foot. Inside, a single opening serves as both mouth and waste exit, leading to a gastrovascular cavity where digestion occurs. It is an efficient design, stripped of anything unnecessary for a life spent waiting. Waiting, however, does not mean vulnerability. The venom delivered by nematocysts is a complex cocktail of peptides and proteins that disrupt nerve function, damage cell membranes, and trigger pain responses. The exact composition varies between species, tailored to the prey and predators each anemone encounters. This variability matters. Reef environments are crowded and competition is intense. Anemones that could deter more intruders, immobilize more prey, or resist more harassment were more likely to hold their ground over time. Evolution rewarded stillness paired with consequence. Because the anemone is fixed in place, it must shape its surroundings to survive. It does this not by expanding outward, but by creating exclusion. Fish learn quickly which tentacles sting and which do not. Many species give anemones a wide berth, altering their foraging routes and resting sites accordingly. This avoidance creates gaps in grazing pressure and shelter availability, subtly reshaping the microhabitat. Algae may grow taller nearby. Certain invertebrates find refuge just outside the danger zone, exploiting the reluctance of predators to approach. The anemone becomes a quiet architect of reef structure, influencing who eats, who hides, and who moves through its territory. For animals immune to its venom, the anemone becomes something else entirely. Clownfish are the most famous example, protected by a mucus layer that prevents nematocyst discharge. This immunity allows them to live among the tentacles without harm, turning the anemone into a fortress. The anemone gains protection in return, as the clownfish drives away predators and parasites. This mutualism is not sentimental. It is transactional and enforced. The anemone does not relax its defenses because allies are present. It remains lethal to everything else. The clownfish's bravery is borrowed from the anemone's chemistry. This relationship highlights the anemone's role as a static enforcer. The anemone does not differentiate between enemy and stranger. It simply reacts. Anything that touches without the correct biochemical signature is punished. This indiscriminate defense is one of its strengths. There is no hesitation, no recognition delay. The reef is full of organisms that probe, nibble, and test boundaries. Against such pressure, hesitation would be fatal. The anemone's response is automatic and absolute. Feeding follows the same logic. Small fish, plankton, and drifting organic matter are captured when currents push them into the tentacles. Once ensnared and immobilized, the tentacles flex, guiding prey toward the central mouth. Digestion is slow but thorough, breaking down tissues and distributing nutrients through the body cavity. Excess energy supports growth, tentacle regeneration, and in some species, reproduction through fission or budding. The anemone does not hunt. It harvests the movement of the reef itself. This strategy has consequences for how anemones reproduce and spread. Because they are fixed, dispersal often relies on larval stages released into the water column. These larvae drift with currents before settling onto suitable substrate. Settlement is risky. Many larvae die without finding a viable location. Those that do must compete immediately with other sessile organisms for space. The reef surface is already crowded with corals, sponges, and algae, all fighting for light and nutrients. An anemone that successfully establishes itself does so by enforcing boundaries early, stinging encroaching neighbors, and preventing overgrowth. Over time, this creates patchwork territories of influence. Each anemone occupies a small but potent zone where chemical defense dictates access. Fish behavior adapts around these zones, creating patterns of movement that ripple outward. Predators avoid certain approaches. Prey congregates in safer corridors. The anemone's impact extends far beyond its physical footprint. There is a tendency to underestimate organisms that do not move. Mobility is often equated with agency, while stillness is mistaken for passivity. The anemone disproves this assumption. Its stillness is not inactivity. It is a strategic choice enabled by weaponized contact. Every tentacle is a loaded trap. Every movement of the water, a potential delivery system. The anemone does not need speed because it controls consequence. This becomes especially clear during disturbances. Storms, strong currents, and shifting sediments can uproot or damage reef organisms. Anemones respond by contracting, reducing surface area, and clinging tightly to the substrate. Their muscular foot anchors them against forces that would dislodge less adapted species. When conditions stabilize, they expand again, reclaiming their territory. The reef changes, but the anemone persists, waiting for movement to resume. In ecological terms, the anemone represents a defensive extreme. It invests heavily in deterrence rather than pursuit. This shapes not only its own survival, but the behavior of everything around it. Fish that could otherwise dominate a patch of reef choose different routes. Invertebrates learn avoidance patterns. Even algae growth is indirectly affected by altered grazing paths. The anemone does not need to assert dominance actively. It simply exists as a consequence engine. This logic explains why clownfish aggression appears so exaggerated. The fish is not brave on its own. It is brave because retreat is always available, backed by a lethal partner that never sleeps and never hesitates. The anemone allows small fish to behave like enforcers because it absorbs the ultimate risk. Without the anemone, the clownfish would be just another brightly colored target. With it, the clownfish becomes an extension of a static weapon system. From a broader evolutionary perspective, the anemone's success underscores a recurring theme in nature. Control of space can matter more than control of movement. While predators refine speed, stealth, and sensory acuity, defenders like anemones refine denial. They make certain spaces too costly to enter. This shifts competition away from direct conflict and toward avoidance, conserving energy and reducing damage. As currents continue to carry life past its tentacles, the anemone remains unmoved, a soft-looking hazard anchored in place. Fish dart around it, careful and practiced. Some approach too closely and learn quickly. Others remember and keep their distance. The reef reorganizes itself subtly around this unmoving presence, paths bending, behaviors adjusting, risks recalculated. In a world obsessed with pursuit and escape, the anemone demonstrates a different model of power. It does not advance. It does not retreat. It makes the ground itself hostile and lets the reef decide who is willing to pay the price of entry. Some fighters never move. They do not need to. They simply make the space they occupy deadly, and in doing so, they win every fight that comes to them. A grouper does not rush into view. It appears the way architecture appears, already there, occupying space before movement draws attention to it. One moment a reef ledge looks empty, just stone and shadow, and the next a massive head shifts slightly, an eye rotates, and the illusion of vacancy disappears. Groupers blend into the reef not through camouflage alone, but through stillness. They wait in places where movement is optional and presence is enough. These fish are built like boulders with fins, thick bodies tapering only slightly toward the tail, broad heads reinforced with heavy bone, and mouths so large they seem out of proportion even to their size. Speed is not their defining trait. Control is. Groupers dominate reef real estate by occupying critical points, cave mouths, ledges, overhangs and drop-offs, where prey movement funnels naturally. These locations are not chosen at random. They are choke points where fish must pass, hesitate or turn. A grouper stationed here does not need to chase. The reef brings opportunity to its doorstep. Territorial dominance in groupers is about visibility and inevitability, rather than aggression for its own sake. A large individual will patrol a familiar circuit, moving slowly along a ledge, dipping its head into crevices, and then returning to the same resting spot. Other fish learn this pattern. Smaller predators avoid the area. Mid-sized fish adjust their routes. The grouper does not have to attack constantly to assert control. Its size alone establishes hierarchy. In reef ecosystems, size is not just strength, it is deterrence. When conflict does arise, the grouper's primary tool is its mouth. This mouth is not merely a feeding apparatus. It is a display structure, a pressure system, and a threat signal rolled into one. At rest, the jaws are already large. When flared open, they transform the front of the fish into a gaping cavity that seems capable of swallowing the reef itself. This display matters. Many reef animals assess danger visually before committing to an action. A grouper's open mouth communicates one thing clearly: proximity is a mistake. The mechanics behind this are precise. Groupers are suction feeders, meaning they capture prey by rapidly expanding the volume of their mouth and throat, creating a pressure differential that pulls water and anything suspended in it inward. This happens in fractions of a second. The prey does not feel grabbed. It is simply gone. In open water, this is already effective. In confined reef spaces, it becomes devastating. When a grouper strikes near a ledge or cave entrance, the suction effect is amplified by the surrounding rock. Water has fewer directions to escape, increasing the force directed toward the mouth. Fish hovering near shelter are pulled out against their instincts, dragged from safety into darkness. Crustaceans clinging to rock lose their grip. Even other predators can be displaced momentarily by the sudden vacuum. The grouper does not need to be faster than its prey. It needs to be closer to the right surface. This suction capability also turns the mouth into a theft device. Groupers are notorious for stealing prey from other hunters, not through speed or stealth, but through timing and presence. A smaller predator may corner a fish near a reef face, only for a grouper to drift in and inhale both prey and water in a single motion. The smaller hunter is left with nothing, often stunned by the pressure wave. The grouper's mass and position allow it to exploit the effort of others with minimal cost. This behavior reinforces the grouper's reputation on the reef. Other predators learn to be cautious when hunting near a large individual. It is not just competition, it is interference. The grouper does not actively harass or chase rivals. It simply exists as a gravitational force, altering outcomes by proximity alone. Groupers can also swallow prey that appears impossibly large relative to their head size. The bones of the skull and jaw are loosely connected by flexible ligaments, allowing the mouth to expand far beyond what its resting shape suggests. This adaptation is not unique to groupers, but their size makes it especially striking. Fish nearly half the length of the grouper itself can disappear into the mouth, subdued not by teeth, but by pressure and lack of escape. This swallowing ability has implications beyond feeding. In reef disputes, the threat of being engulfed matters as much as actual attacks. Smaller fish approaching a grouper's territory are not just at risk of being bitten, they are at risk of being removed from the system entirely. The reef operates on caution, and animals that survive do so by reading signals accurately. A grouper's presence is one of the clearest signals available. Despite their bulk, groupers are not clumsy. Their movements are economical, precise, and deliberate. They adjust buoyancy subtly, hovering in place without finning when necessary. Their pectoral fins provide fine control, allowing them to pivot, reverse, or rise slightly without dramatic motion. This restraint prevents unnecessary attention and conserves energy. The grouper does not advertise effort. It advertises inevitability. Territorial interactions between groupers themselves follow similar logic. Larger individuals displace smaller ones from prime ledges through intimidation displays rather than prolonged combat. These displays often involve mouth flaring, body orientation, and slow, deliberate advances. Actual biting is rare and risky, as injuries to the mouth compromise feeding. Dominance is established through posture and scale. The reef does not reward reckless escalation among animals this large. Groupers also play a key ecological role as population regulators. By targeting mid-sized fish and invertebrates, they prevent certain species from monopolizing reef resources. Their preference for ledges and caves means they exert pressure on animals that rely heavily on shelter, forcing those populations to remain mobile and dispersed. This reduces overgrazing and promotes structural diversity across the reef. In some ecosystems, groupers form spawning aggregations, gathering in large numbers at predictable locations and times. These events temporarily override territorial behavior, concentrating massive biomass in small areas. The energy and nutrients involved ripple through the ecosystem, supporting scavengers and predators. After spawning, individuals return to their territories, and the reef resumes its usual pattern of control points and exclusion zones. The grouper's interaction with the reef is not just biological, it is architectural. By occupying and defending key structures, groupers influence how space is used by other animals. Ledges with resident groupers become high-risk zones. Caves near their patrol routes see reduced traffic. Over time, these patterns shape movement corridors and feeding grounds. The reef becomes a landscape of gradients, with safety and danger defined by who controls which mouth of stone. The irony of the grouper's dominance is that it relies on restraint. It does not chase prey across open water. It does not exhaust itself in pursuit. It waits. It positions. It uses mass and physics to let the environment do the work. This strategy allows groupers to live long lives, growing steadily larger and more dominant with age. On reefs, age often equals authority. As light shifts and shadows lengthen, the grouper settles back into its ledge, body angled slightly outward, mouth partially open. The posture looks relaxed, almost lazy, but it is functional. Water flows freely across the gills. The mouth remains ready. Fish passing by keep their distance, aware of the invisible boundary that extends outward from that opening. Reef conflicts are often imagined as contests of speed, venom, or numbers. The grouper offers a different lesson. Control can come from mass, positioning, and the ability to manipulate water itself. In these environments, the mouth is more than a feeding tool. It is a signal, a weapon, and a statement of ownership. In reef fights, it is often not the sharpest teeth or the fastest strike that decides the outcome. It is who controls the space where movement collapses and escape fails. For the grouper, that control begins and ends with the mouth, a living gateway that turns proximity into submission. The octopus does not announce conflict the way most reef animals do. There is no permanent armor, no exposed teeth, no obvious weapon held at the ready. At rest, it looks provisional, like a thought that has not yet decided what shape to take. Arms drape loosely over rock. Skin blends into the reef with casual accuracy. The animal appears relaxed, almost absent. Then a shadow shifts, or a shape presses too close, and the octopus changes faster than the water around it. The body expands, arms unfurling outward in a sudden display that multiplies apparent size. Skin darkens from mottled stone to deep rust or near black in less than a heartbeat. Texture erupts across the mantle as muscular papillae rise, transforming smooth flesh into spikes, ridges, or knobby protrusions that break outlines and signal readiness. The octopus is no longer hiding. It is confronting. This is not panic. It is deliberate escalation. Octopus conflict is not about striking first or striking hardest. It is about control. When an octopus engages a rival or predator, the encounter immediately becomes a wrestling match conducted in 3 dimensions. Arms reach outward, not to hit, but to seize. Suction cups make contact, each one capable of independent grip strength and tactile assessment. The goal is not to injure immediately, but to anchor. Once anchored, the octopus begins to dismantle the opponent's options. Vision is the first target. Arms sweep upward and across faces, covering eyes, occluding sight, forcing disorientation. In the underwater environment, loss of vision is catastrophic. Most reef animals rely heavily on visual cues for balance, escape trajectories, and threat assessment. An octopus that controls an opponent's eyes controls the tempo of the fight. While the opponent thrashes or attempts to reorient, the octopus tightens its grip, redistributing arms to maintain leverage. This strategy is made possible by one of the most unusual nervous systems in the animal kingdom. An octopus does not centralize control in the way vertebrates do. More than half of its neurons are distributed throughout its arms, allowing each limb to sense, decide, and act with a degree of autonomy. This means that during a struggle, the octopus does not need to consciously direct every movement. Arms react locally, responding instantly to changes in pressure, texture, and resistance. In practical terms, this makes the octopus unpredictable in close combat. While a predator may anticipate a single direction of force or a repeated motion, the octopus constantly changes patterns. One arm pins while another probes for weakness. A third adjusts grip in response to movement, while a fourth explores escape routes or braces against rock. The animal is not thinking through the fight step by step. It is parallel processing. The reef amplifies this advantage. An octopus uses the environment actively, wrapping arms around coral heads, wedging suckers into cracks, and pulling against solid surfaces to increase force without expending additional energy. The reef becomes a network of anchor points. Against animals that rely on linear movement or open water momentum, this is devastating. The octopus turns complex terrain into a mechanical advantage. Octopus rivals understand this risk. Interactions between octopuses often begin with displays rather than immediate grappling. Color changes intensify, arm postures stiffen, and bodies rise higher off the substrate to assert presence. Size matters, but confidence matters more. A hesitant octopus signals vulnerability. A decisive one claims space quickly, forcing the other to reconsider. Actual physical fights are costly, and both animals know it. When combat does occur, it is brief but intense. Arms entangle. Bodies twist. The mantle contracts rhythmically, expelling water through the siphon in short bursts to adjust position. There is no clean separation between attack and defense. Every movement serves both. Even the beak, hidden at the center of the arms, remains a last resort rather than a primary weapon. Biting risks entanglement too deep to escape. Control remains the priority. Predator encounters follow similar rules. When threatened by fish, sharks, or marine mammals, the octopus does not always flee immediately. It assesses. Arms spread to increase apparent size. Color shifts toward high contrast patterns that disrupt outlines and confuse depth perception. Texture spikes distort shape recognition. This moment is a test, not of strength, but of commitment. Many predators abort at this stage, unwilling to engage an opponent that does not behave like prey. If escalation continues, the octopus commits fully. but always with an exit strategy prepared. This is where its intelligence becomes most evident, not in aggression, but in retreat. When an octopus disengages, it does not simply run. It resets the encounter entirely. Ink is released as a physical object, not just a cloud. The ink contains mucus that holds together in dense plumes or decoy shapes, confusing predators by presenting a false target. At the same moment, the octopus expels water forcefully through its siphon, generating a jet that propels it backward or sideways at speed. Direction matters. The octopus does not flee in a straight line. It angles toward complex terrain where visual tracking becomes difficult. Then, almost instantly, it disappears. Chromatophores, iridophores, and leucophores across the skin activate in coordinated patterns, shifting color, brightness, and reflectivity to match the surrounding substrate. Texture flattens or spikes depending on background. The octopus does not become invisible. It becomes ambiguous. Predators searching for a moving shape find none. The animal that existed a moment ago has been replaced by reef. This sequence is not reflex alone. Studies have shown that octopuses adjust escape strategies based on context, predator type, and prior encounters. They remember which routes offer better cover, which textures blend more effectively, and which distances trigger renewed pursuit. Retreat is not surrender. It is repositioning. The cost of these tactics is high. Ink production consumes energy. Rapid color changes and muscular contractions are metabolically expensive. An octopus cannot afford to engage constantly. This constraint drives selectivity. Octopuses do not fight to dominate territory in the way morays or groupers do. They fight to survive encounters and preserve flexibility. Their power lies in not committing unnecessarily. This mindset extends to how octopuses interact with their environment beyond combat. They manipulate objects, block entrances to dens with stones, and rearrange surroundings to create escape routes. These behaviors are not random. They reflect anticipation. An octopus prepares for future conflict by shaping the battlefield in advance. Even thermoregulation plays a role. As ectotherms, octopuses are sensitive to temperature changes, which influence muscle performance and reaction speed. They select dens and hunting times that optimize neural and muscular efficiency. A colder octopus is slower. A warmer one is more responsive. These considerations feed directly into combat readiness. This is why octopuses often survive encounters they do not technically win. They disengage before damage accumulates. They accept temporary loss of space in exchange for continued flexibility. Predators may control territory. Octopuses control outcomes. As the water settles after an encounter, the octopus resumes its provisional existence. Arms relax. Color softens. Texture smooths. The animal becomes part of the reef again, not because it is passive, but because it has decided the moment no longer requires assertion. In reef conflicts, many animals win by overpowering, intimidating, or outlasting their opponents. The octopus operates under a different logic. It does not need to win every fight. It needs to leave with options intact. That is its advantage. Not strength, not speed, decision-making. It does not win every fight. It wins the decision-making. A lionfish does not rush into conflict. It drifts forward as if carried by confidence rather than current. Fins unfurled into a slow, deliberate bloom that transforms its outline from fish to obstacle. The body itself is relatively compact, laterally compressed and unremarkable in isolation, but the fins rewrite its silhouette entirely. Long dorsal spines rise like pikes. Pectoral fins fan outward in wide arcs, striped and translucent, extending the animal's reach far beyond the limits of its flesh. What looks ornamental from a distance becomes something else up close. A mobile wall of needles. On a crowded reef, shape matters. Many fish assess danger not by identifying species, but by evaluating approach vectors and escape routes. The lionfish exploits this instinct with precision. When it spreads its fins fully, it does not simply look larger. It occupies more directions at once. There is no clear side to approach, no obvious blind angle, no easy line of attack. Every direction presents the same problem. Venomous spines oriented outward, ready to punish contact. These spines are not passive decorations. Each is a rigid extension of the skeleton, connected to venom glands at the base. When pressure is applied, venom flows along grooves into the wound, delivering a potent cocktail that causes intense pain, swelling, and in some cases, systemic effects. For reef predators, even a minor envenomation can be disastrous. Pain disrupts hunting efficiency. Swelling interferes with swimming. Injury invites infection. The reef is unforgiving to the wounded. This reality shapes how lionfish engage in conflict. They do not need to strike. They need to present risk clearly enough that others decide not to. Most encounters end at the display phase, with the lionfish slowly advancing, fins fully spread, maintaining eye contact and closing space at a measured pace. The movement is not aggressive in the traditional sense. It is confident. It communicates that the lionfish is not startled, not retreating, and not unaware. Predators faced with this geometry hesitate. Biting becomes dangerous. Grabbing is nearly impossible without impaling sensitive tissue. Even a successful strike risks injury disproportionate to the reward. The calculation shifts rapidly. The lionfish does not have to win the fight. It only has to make the fight unappealing. This strategy is especially effective because lionfish are slow swimmers. They cannot outpace most predators in open water. Speed is not part of the plan. Instead, they rely on positional dominance and deterrence. By controlling posture and spacing, they force opponents to confront the consequences of contact rather than the opportunity of attack. The defensive geometry of the lionfish is complete. Dorsal spines guard the top. Anal spines protect the underside. Pectoral fins extend laterally, blocking side approaches. Even the head is partially shielded by forward-oriented spines. There is no clean bite zone. Teeth that might grip flesh instead encounter rigid, venomous barriers. The lionfish has turned its entire body into a hazard. This geometry also influences how lionfish interact with each other. Territorial disputes between lionfish are rare and typically resolved through display alone. Fins spread, bodies angle. Space is negotiated without collision. Actual contact risks injury to both parties, and neither benefits from escalation. The same deterrence that protects lionfish from predators regulates interactions within their own species. The reef community responds accordingly. Fish learn quickly that lionfish are not worth testing. Even large predators that could physically overpower a lionfish avoid them, not because they cannot win, but because winning carries unacceptable risk. The lionfish becomes a moving exclusion zone, a presence that alters traffic patterns and feeding routes simply by existing. This avoidance has cascading ecological effects. Prey species displaced by lionfish adjust their behavior, often crowding into less optimal habitats. Competitors alter hunting strategies. The lionfish, through deterrence rather than aggression, reshapes the local ecosystem. The effectiveness of this strategy is amplified by the lionfish's behavior. It rarely flees when approached. Retreat would signal vulnerability and invite pursuit. Instead, it holds position or advances slowly, reinforcing the impression of control. This confidence is not bravado. It is supported by anatomy. The lionfish can afford to stand its ground. When contact does occur, it is often accidental rather than aggressive. A predator misjudges distance. A fish panics and darts the wrong way. The result is immediate and memorable. Pain is a powerful teacher. Survivors remember the shape, the stripes, the posture. Learning spreads through the reef, not socially, but statistically. Individuals that do not avoid lionfish are removed from the population or injured enough to lose competitive edge. The venom itself is not designed to kill large predators outright. Its primary function is deterrence. Pain enforces avoidance more effectively than lethality. A dead predator is irrelevant. A living predator that refuses to approach is ideal. Lionfish also use their fins offensively in subtle ways. During feeding, they corral prey by spreading pectoral fins to block escape routes, herding smaller fish toward the mouth. This same motion, when directed toward a rival or potential threat, reinforces the sense of enclosure. Space collapses. Options disappear. The lionfish does not chase prey into open water. It compresses the environment until capture becomes inevitable or the intruder retreats. The irony is that lionfish appear almost delicate in motion. Their fins ripple and wave with the current, creating an impression of fragility. This aesthetic misleads observers into underestimating the structure beneath. The spines are rigid. The venom is real. The softness is an illusion. From an evolutionary perspective, this is an elegant solution. Instead of investing in speed, strength, or complex behaviors, lionfish invest in deterrence. Their success depends on making injury likely enough that others choose avoidance. This reduces energy expenditure, limits damage, and allows the lionfish to operate with relative calm in an otherwise competitive environment. This calm is deceptive. The lionfish is not passive. It is calculating. Every movement is slow because speed is unnecessary. Every display is exaggerated because clarity matters. Ambiguity invites testing. Certainty discourages it. In environments where lionfish are invasive, this strategy becomes especially disruptive. Native predators do not recognize the geometry immediately. They test, learn painfully, or fail to learn at all. The lionfish's deterrence advantage allows it to dominate space and resources without being challenged effectively. This is not because it is more aggressive, but because it changes the cost structure of interaction. As light filters down through the water column, the lionfish holds position near a reef outcrop, fins extended, spines radiating outward. Smaller fish give it space. Larger fish glance and turn away. No fight occurs. No chase follows. The lionfish remains exactly where it is, unbothered. This is the final lesson of the lionfish. Conflict does not always require engagement. Sometimes the most effective defense is not strength or speed, but the ability to make contact a mistake. On coral reefs, many animals win by biting harder, striking faster, or thinking quicker. The lionfish wins by ensuring that no one wants to try. Sometimes the best fighter is the one nobody dares to touch. The Napoleon fish does not enter the reef like a predator. It enters like a structure. Water parts around a body that seems too solid for motion. A thick, slab-sided fish moving with unhurried authority through coral corridors that smaller animals treat as high-risk terrain. Its head is massive, crowned by a pronounced hump that gives it a blunt, almost architectural profile. Thick lips frame a mouth built not for finesse but for force. The impression is immediate and difficult to ignore. This is not an animal that rushes decisions. It does not need to. Napoleon fish dominate reefs by redefining scale. They are not the fastest swimmers, nor are they the most aggressive in the conventional sense. Instead, they bring mass into places where mass matters. Reef environments are dense, cluttered, and unforgiving to large bodies. Most big fish avoid tight spaces, preferring open water where maneuverability and speed matter more than raw strength. The Napoleon fish does the opposite. It pushes into the reef's interior, navigating coral heads, ledges, and feeding zones that smaller fish rely on for shelter. Its size does not limit access. It becomes access. This ability is rooted in anatomy. The Napoleon fish is built like a battering ram, softened by patience. Its body is thick and laterally compressed, allowing it to slide through narrow corridors without becoming trapped. The head is reinforced with heavy bone and muscle, supporting jaws capable of crushing hard-shelled prey. This jaw strength is not theoretical. Napoleon fish feed on mollusks, crustaceans, and even organisms protected by rigid exoskeletons. When the jaws close, resistance matters less than placement. Hard prey that would injure smaller fish becomes food here. This feeding capacity shapes behavior across the reef. Zones rich in hard prey become contested not through speed, but through intimidation. Smaller fish arrive first, probing cautiously, feeding quickly, and retreating often. When a Napoleon fish enters the area, the dynamic changes instantly. It does not chase competitors away. It does not need to. Its presence alone shifts risk calculations. Being near a fish that large, that confident, that capable of crushing prey, carries uncertainty. Smaller fish withdraw not because they are attacked, but because staying is no longer efficient. This is how dominance works at scale. The Napoleon fish does not establish territory through constant patrols or displays. It establishes control by repeatedly occupying the same feeding grounds and moving through them without hesitation. Over time, other fish learn the pattern. These zones become associated with the Napoleon fish's presence. Traffic thins. Feeding windows shrink. The bully does not shout. It shows up. Close space encounters reveal the true power of this strategy. In reef interiors, sprinting is useless. There is no room to accelerate, no clear escape lanes. Here, control of space matters more than speed. The Napoleon fish moves deliberately, angling its body to block passages, pushing smaller fish into less optimal positions. The thick lips and heavy head are not just feeding tools, they are spatial instruments. A gentle nudge from a fish this size carries authority. Coral does not move. Smaller fish do. Conflicts arise around prime feeding spots, especially areas dense with shelled invertebrates or coral growth that shelters prey. Napoleon fish push into these zones despite the risks, brushing past stinging organisms and abrasive surfaces that deter others. Their skin is thick, their movements measured. Damage accumulates slowly, and they can afford it. Smaller fish cannot. This asymmetry gives the Napoleon fish access to resources others avoid entirely. The jaw mechanics amplify this advantage. Crushing hard prey produces sound and vibration that ripple through the reef. These signals advertise capability without direct confrontation. Other animals hear the crack of shell and feel the pressure wave. The message is unambiguous. This fish can eat what you cannot, and it is doing so right here. Napoleon fish do not need to defend feeding grounds aggressively. They return to them repeatedly, reinforcing dominance through consistency. Reef animals learn not through instruction, but through outcomes. Fish that linger near a feeding Napoleon fish experience displacement, disruption, or loss of access. Over time, avoidance becomes habitual. The bully wins without fighting. This behavior scales with age and size. Younger individuals are more cautious, selecting less contested zones and retreating more readily. As they grow, their confidence increases in parallel with their physical capability. Older, larger Napoleon fish become fixtures in certain reef sections, their presence shaping daily movement patterns. These fish are not territorial in the strict sense. They do not exclude permanently. They monopolize temporarily, repeatedly, and predictably. The sensory world of the Napoleon fish supports this approach. Vision is acute, allowing them to monitor movement across complex backgrounds. They detect subtle shifts in behavior, noticing when fish begin to withdraw even before they leave. This feedback reinforces confidence. The Napoleon fish does not need to look for fear. It feels it through space opening around it. There is also an element of risk tolerance at play. Napoleon fish enter zones that expose them to parasites, abrasive coral, and occasional stings. They accept these costs because the payoff is reliable food access. Smaller fish, operating on narrower margins, cannot afford the same risks. This difference in tolerance is often what separates dominant animals from subordinates in reef ecosystems. Dominance is not just about strength. It is about who can absorb cost longer. The reputation of the Napoleon fish compounds over time. Fish that have encountered one remember the encounter. Even brief displacement teaches avoidance. Memory persists across days and weeks. The reef becomes a landscape of learned boundaries. Certain silhouettes trigger retreat. Certain movements signal occupation. The Napoleon fish benefits from this memory without effort. Despite their dominance, Napoleon fish are not reckless. They do not engage in unnecessary conflict with equally large predators. When encountering sharks or other massive fish, interactions remain cautious and brief. Dominance here is situational. The Napoleon fish excels in close quarters and feeding grounds, not open water pursuit. It knows where it is strongest and operates there consistently. This restraint is part of what makes the strategy work. By avoiding unnecessary escalation, the Napoleon fish preserves energy and minimizes injury. Longevity matters. Larger size increases dominance, and size takes time. Surviving long enough to grow is itself an achievement in reef environments. Every avoided fight contributes to future authority. As daylight shifts and shadows deepen, the Napoleon fish continues its slow circuit, moving from one feeding zone to another. Smaller fish part and reform behind it. Coral corridors open briefly, then close again once it passes. No chase follows. No strike occurs. Control is exerted through certainty rather than violence. This is the final truth of the Napoleon fish. On reefs, power does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks inevitable. Sometimes it is carried in thick lips, heavy bone, and the confidence to move where others hesitate. On reefs, strength combined with confidence is not just an advantage. It is a weapon. A pufferfish at rest looks like a mistake of proportions, a small, rounded body drifting cautiously above the reef, fins fluttering just enough to maintain position. Its movements are tentative, almost apologetic, as if it knows it does not belong among the fast, sharp, or heavily armored. The mouth is small, eyes set wide apart, posture unremarkable. In this state, the pufferfish reads as prey. Then a shadow passes too close, and the situation changes faster than instinct can track. The transformation is abrupt and mechanical. The pufferfish gulps water, expanding its elastic stomach with astonishing speed. The body balloons outward, skin stretching until the fish becomes a rigid sphere. In species armed with spines, these protrusions lock upright, turning soft tissue into a bristling hazard. What was once an easy target becomes an impossible object. The predator does not face the same animal it approached seconds earlier. The rules of the encounter have been rewritten. This is psychological warfare executed through physiology. The pufferfish does not strike. It does not flee. It alters the problem it presents to the attacker so drastically that the attack no longer makes sense. Predators are optimized for handling prey of certain shapes, sizes, and behaviors. Their jaws, throats, and swallowing mechanics operate within constraints. Inflation exploits those constraints ruthlessly. For predators that swallow prey whole, the calculation collapses immediately. The pufferfish's inflated size exceeds gape limits, making ingestion impossible. Attempting to force the issue risks jaw injury, throat obstruction, or fatal choking. For predators that bite and tear, spines introduce a new layer of danger. Teeth that close around inflated tissue encounter rigid points that puncture gums, lips, or internal surfaces. Pain follows. Blood follows. Infection may follow. The reward remains the same. The cost multiplies. What makes this strategy effective is not fear. Predators are not emotional in the human sense. They are economical. Every hunting decision is a balance between energy gained and damage risked. Inflation flips that balance in seconds. The pufferfish does not need to convince the predator it is dangerous. It only needs to make the math unfavorable. The inflation mechanism itself is a marvel of evolutionary engineering. Puffers possess highly elastic stomachs and the ability to rapidly draw in water or air through the mouth. Specialized muscles control this intake, allowing expansion far beyond normal body volume. Blood flow shifts to accommodate the sudden change in pressure, and internal organs reposition without damage. This system is costly. Inflation stresses the body and consumes energy. It is not used casually. It is reserved for moments when retreat or camouflage has failed. That restraint is critical. Puffers are not slow thinkers, but they are not impulsive either. They rely first on avoidance, maintaining distance from threats, and using subtle movements to reduce attention. Inflation is a last resort because it leaves the fish temporarily compromised. An inflated puffer cannot swim effectively. It drifts, relying on the threat display to end the encounter. If the predator does not disengage, the puffer has limited options. This vulnerability is why the strategy must work quickly, and why it usually does. Most predators do not linger once the handling problem becomes clear. They circle briefly, reassess, and withdraw. The encounter ends not with pursuit or injury, but with abandonment. Some puffer species add another layer to this calculus: chemical defense. Many puffers contain tetrodotoxin, one of the most potent neurotoxins known. This toxin is concentrated in skin and internal organs, and ingestion can be fatal to predators. Importantly, the pufferfish does not inject this toxin. It does not need to. The threat is implicit. Predators that have learned, through experience or evolutionary memory, that puffers are poisonous do not need to test the spines or size. Recognition alone triggers avoidance. Even predators unfamiliar with tetrodotoxin learn quickly. A single painful encounter is often enough to establish lifelong avoidance. The reef remembers through survivors. Puffers benefit from this memory without further effort. Inflation also changes how the puffer interacts with space. By expanding, it wedges itself into crevices or presses against the substrate, making extraction difficult. The fish becomes a plug, filling the available volume and denying leverage to the attacker. In confined reef environments, this tactic is especially effective. Predators cannot get a clean angle, and the inflated body resists displacement. The psychological aspect extends beyond predators. Puffers use inflation in intraspecific encounters as well. Disputes over space or resources may trigger partial inflation, a warning rather than full commitment. Size increase signals resolve. The opponent reassesses. Escalation often stops there. Once again, the goal is not dominance through force, but conflict termination through altered perception. From an ecological perspective, this strategy has profound implications. Puffers occupy niches that would otherwise be inaccessible to slow, soft-bodied fish. They forage openly, picking at invertebrates and algae with beak-like teeth designed for crushing. Their teeth never stop growing, requiring constant use to prevent overgrowth. This feeding behavior influences reef composition, controlling populations of hard-shelled organisms and shaping algal communities. The ability to survive predator encounters through inflation allows puffers to maintain these roles without investing in speed or armor. They trade constant readiness for situational transformation. When calm, they are efficient foragers. When threatened, they become unmanageable objects. This adaptability reflects a broader principle in evolution. Survival favors organisms that can force opponents into bad decisions. The pufferfish does not need to win a fight. It needs to end it. By shifting the interaction from pursuit to handling, it moves the encounter into a domain where the predator is less prepared. There is a primitive clarity to this lesson. Many animals evolve to attack better, faster, or harder. Puffers evolve to be difficult. Difficulty is underrated as a survival strategy. It requires less energy over time and fewer risky engagements. It turns predators into reluctant participants. As the encounter ends, the puffer slowly deflates, releasing water from its stomach and returning to its original form. This process is controlled and deliberate. Only when the threat has fully withdrawn does the fish regain mobility. The reef resumes its rhythm. No chase occurred. No blood was spilled. Yet the outcome is decisive. Observers often misinterpret this as weakness. A fish that must inflate to survive appears reactive rather than dominant. This misses the point entirely. Dominance is contextual. In the moment of threat, the pufferfish dictated the outcome by forcing the predator to disengage. That is control, even if it does not look like conquest. Over evolutionary time, this strategy has proven remarkably stable. Puffers have persisted across diverse habitats, from coral reefs to open seas, because their defense scales across predator types. Size-based predators fail. Bite-based predators fail. Swallowing predators fail. The solution is universal because it attacks the decision process rather than the attack method. As light filters down and shadows stretch across the reef, a pufferfish resumes its cautious patrol, eyes scanning, fins paddling gently. It looks vulnerable again. That vulnerability is misleading. The reef has already adjusted its behavior around the possibility of inflation. Predators remember. Space opens. The puffer moves on. In the end, the pufferfish teaches a lesson older than strategy itself. Survival does not always belong to the strongest or fastest. Sometimes it belongs to the one that makes the enemy stop trying. Puffers do not outfight you. They out-decision you. A sea snake does not announce danger with posture or display. It arrives quietly, a slender body sliding through reef structure with the ease of something pawed rather than something swimming. Its movement is smooth and continuous, a controlled ripple that carries it between coral branches, along rock faces, and into spaces where bulk becomes a liability. At a distance it looks unhurried, almost indifferent to the chaos of reef life unfolding around it. This calm is deceptive. The sea snake is not passive, it is selective. Unlike many reef predators that rely on speed or intimidation, sea snakes are built around precision. Their bodies are laterally flattened, especially toward the tail, allowing efficient propulsion without sacrificing maneuverability. The head is small, streamlined, and reinforced just enough to deliver a decisive bite without becoming trapped. Every aspect of the design points toward short engagements. The sea snake does not want a fight. It wants an outcome. Reef environments are unforgiving to elongated animals. Narrow crevices, branching coral, and abrasive surfaces create countless opportunities to become pinned, bitten, or injured. Sea snakes avoid these risks not by staying away, but by becoming fluent in complexity. They move like living ropes, draping themselves through three-dimensional spaces where rigid bodies struggle. This movement allows them to approach prey and threats alike without telegraphing intent. When a sea snake encounters a potential conflict, assessment happens instantly. Vision, chemical cues, and water movement inform the decision. Most interactions end here, with avoidance rather than escalation. Injury is expensive in marine environments. A wounded snake loses mobility, and mobility is survival. Sea snakes have evolved to minimize contact unless success is nearly guaranteed. When commitment does happen, the change is immediate and absolute. The body stiffens slightly, coils tightening just enough to stabilize position. The head aligns, jaws opening not in a threat display, but in function. The bite is quick, controlled, and precise, targeting areas where venom delivery is most effective. There is no prolonged grappling, no wrestling. The sea snake does not hold on longer than necessary. Venom is the centerpiece of this strategy. Sea snake venom is among the most potent in the marine world, evolved specifically to immobilize prey quickly. Neurotoxins disrupt nerve signaling, leading to paralysis within moments. The goal is not pain. It is shutdown. A paralyzed opponent cannot fight back, cannot escape, and cannot injure the snake during disengagement. This is the critical point. Sea snakes do not use venom to dominate extended battles. They use it to prevent battles from happening at all. By ending resistance immediately, they avoid the chaotic, unpredictable phase where injuries occur. The bite is a shortcut through conflict, a way to bypass strength disparities and environmental hazards. After injection, the sea snake disengages. It does not linger. It does not wait for complete immobilization. The decision to withdraw is as deliberate as the decision to strike. The snake relies on venom kinetics rather than continued contact. This behavior reduces exposure to secondary threats, such as scavengers, competitors, or accidental entanglement. This hit and disengage tactic shapes how other reef animals interact with sea snakes. Fish that recognize the silhouette or movement pattern adjust behavior instantly, creating space rather than testing boundaries. Predators that might overpower a snake physically avoid contact because the cost of a single mistake is too high. Even large animals hesitate around a creature that does not posture but can end an encounter in seconds. The absence of display is itself a signal. Many reef animals rely on visual warnings to deter threats. Sea snakes do not advertise. Their calm, almost detached movement creates uncertainty. Uncertainty slows decision-making. In reef environments, hesitation is often enough to shift advantage. The physical adaptations supporting this strategy extend beyond venom. Sea snakes possess valved nostrils that close underwater, allowing extended dives. Some species can absorb oxygen through their skin, supplementing lung respiration and reducing the need to surface frequently. This capability allows them to remain in hunting zones longer, waiting for ideal conditions rather than rushing decisions. Thermoregulation also plays a role. As ectotherms, sea snakes are sensitive to water temperature, which affects muscle performance and venom efficiency. They time activity to periods when conditions favor rapid neuromuscular response. In warmer water, venom acts faster, muscles respond more efficiently, and recovery from exertion improves. These subtle factors influence when and where sea snakes choose to engage. Sea snakes are not aggressive toward large animals by default. Many encounters with potential predators end without incident because the snake chooses avoidance. However, when cornered or handled, the calculus changes. Precision replaces restraint. The snake does not thrash or attempt to overpower. It delivers exactly what is needed to create space and then withdraws. This restraint is often misunderstood. Humans encountering sea snakes sometimes misinterpret their calm behavior as docility. In reality, it reflects confidence in a system that does not require constant threat display. The snake knows it has an option that ends encounters decisively. It does not need to demonstrate it. Ecologically, sea snakes play a role as regulators of specific prey populations, particularly small fish and eels that inhabit reef crevices. Their ability to navigate tight spaces allows them to exploit niches inaccessible to many predators. By targeting these populations, sea snakes influence the distribution and behavior of other reef species, contributing to balance within the ecosystem. Competition with other predators is minimized through specialization. While morays dominate fixed crevices through grip and leverage, and octopuses control encounters through intelligence and flexibility, sea snakes occupy a different niche entirely. They are transient, precise, and unwilling to commit to prolonged control. Their advantage lies in finishing interactions before they fully develop. This specialization reduces direct conflict. When sea snakes and other predators cross paths, interactions are brief and cautious. Each animal recognizes the risk profile of the other. The reef is full of these silent negotiations, moments where escalation is possible but avoided because the cost is not worth the reward. The wow moment of the sea snake is not spectacle. It is contrast. A body that appears slow, relaxed, almost detached, becomes lethal in the instant it commits. There is no build-up, no warning. The transition from calm to consequence is nearly seamless. This unpredictability is itself a deterrent. After a successful strike, the sea snake resumes its unhurried movement, slipping back into the reef as if nothing happened. There is no triumph, no chase. The event is over. The environment absorbs the outcome quietly. This approach reflects a fundamental principle of survival in complex ecosystems. Injury is the true enemy. Prolonged struggle invites chaos, and chaos favors no one. Animals that can end conflicts quickly gain an advantage, not through dominance, but through preservation. The sea snake embodies this principle completely. It does not seek control of territory or intimidation of rivals. It seeks resolution. Every adaptation, from venom chemistry to body shape, supports the same goal. Finish the interaction before risk accumulates. As currents shift and light fades across the reef, the sea snake continues its path, threading through coral and shadow with practiced ease. It is not looking for a fight. It is prepared for one. In the ocean, the most effective fight is not the one you win after. At the edge of the reef, where coral architecture thins and open water begins, a barracuda hangs in place as if suspended by wires. The body is perfectly horizontal, rigid, and aligned with the current. Fins barely move. The long, torpedo-shaped silhouette looks inert, almost lifeless, a silver line etched against blue. To an untrained eye, it appears calm. To everything else in the water, it reads as a loaded spring. Stillness is the first threat a barracuda delivers. In a reef environment defined by constant motion, true immobility is unnatural. Fish flick, adjust, pulse, and correct endlessly to maintain position. When something large does not move, it demands attention. Prey notice immediately. Rivals notice too. The absence of motion signals readiness, not rest. It means energy is stored, direction is chosen, and commitment can happen without warning. Barracudas are built around this principle. Their bodies are elongated and muscular, optimized for rapid acceleration rather than sustained speed. The tail is deeply forked, capable of generating explosive thrust. The head tapers into a pointed snout, armed with long, needle-like teeth, designed not for chewing, but for shearing. These teeth interlock when the jaws close, forming a trap that punishes any miscalculation in distance or timing. But the barracuda's most important weapon is not its teeth. It is its ability to decide when movement begins. Most reef predators telegraph attacks through posture changes, fin movements, or approach patterns. Barracudas do not. They wait at patrol edges and open lanes where escape options are limited and visibility favors speed. These zones matter. In tight reef interiors, prey can duck into cover, break line of sight, or force predators into awkward angles. In open lanes, there is nowhere to hide. Movement becomes exposure. Barracudas understand this geography instinctively. They patrol drop-offs, reef edges, and sand channels that function as underwater highways. Fish moving through these areas are already committed to travel. They cannot stop easily. They cannot reverse direction quickly. When a barracuda occupies this space, it controls the flow. Confrontations rarely escalate beyond this phase. The barracuda's presence alone alters behavior. Schools tighten or disperse prematurely. Individual fish accelerate nervously or veer away, often abandoning optimal feeding routes. Rivals adjust patrol paths to avoid overlap. The barracuda does not chase these reactions. It allows them to happen. Fear does the work. When an attack does occur, it is not prolonged. There is no pursuit. There is a single explosive lunge that compresses distance faster than prey can respond. The acceleration is violent, a burst of power that transforms stored tension into forward motion in less than a second. The jaws snap shut with audible force, not only capturing prey, but sending a pressure signal through the water that others detect instantly. This jaw snap is not just about feeding. It is a broadcast. Water transmits vibration efficiently, and the shock of a barracuda strike ripples outward. Nearby fish feel it before they see the result. The message is clear and immediate. Something fast just committed, and it succeeded. Even failed strikes serve a purpose. The sound and motion reset the behavioral landscape, clearing space and reinforcing dominance. This is why barracuda confrontations are often decided before contact. Many prey species abort movement the moment a barracuda shifts orientation. A slight adjustment of body angle, a subtle tail flex, is enough to trigger flight responses. The barracuda does not need to strike often. It needs to be believed. The sensory systems supporting this strategy are finely tuned. Barracudas possess excellent vision, especially for detecting contrast and reflective surfaces. This is why shiny objects and erratic movement draw their attention. In open water, contrast equals opportunity. Prey that breaks visual uniformity becomes a target. Stillness on the part of the barracuda enhances this contrast, making any movement by others more obvious. Rival interactions follow similar rules. Barracudas do not engage in extended fights with each other. Encounters are resolved through orientation, spacing, and brief demonstrations of speed. One individual may accelerate past another, not to attack, but to demonstrate capacity. The message is speed, not intent. Escalation rarely goes further because injury at these speeds is catastrophic. A misaligned bite or collision can damage jaws, eyes, or spine. No reward justifies that risk. This risk calculus explains why barracudas prefer open lanes. Speed requires space. Space ensures that if acceleration occurs, it happens on favorable terms. In confined areas, speed becomes unpredictable and dangerous even to the attacker. Barracudas avoid these environments unless forced. They are not ambush predators in the classic sense. They are interceptors. Their behavior shapes the reef in subtle ways. Fish time movements across open spaces to avoid peak barracuda activity. Routes shift. Feeding windows narrow. The presence of a barracuda can fragment schools and alter migration patterns on a local scale. These changes ripple outward, influencing predator-prey dynamics far beyond the individual strike. There is also a social component to barracuda intimidation. Smaller fish learn from observing others. A single explosive strike conditions the behavior of an entire area. The barracuda benefits from this collective learning. It does not need to educate every individual through direct contact. Observation does the work. The irony is that barracudas spend much of their time doing nothing. They hover. They wait. They drift slowly along patrol routes. This inactivity is not inefficiency. It is economy. Energy is conserved for moments when it matters. The barracuda does not waste power on marginal opportunities. It selects moments where the first second determines everything. When a barracuda commits, there is no adjustment phase. The attack either succeeds or fails instantly. There is no recovery chase. A missed strike ends the attempt. The fish returns to stillness, resetting the spring. This pattern reduces exposure and limits fatigue. Over time, it favors individuals that choose correctly rather than often. This approach also minimizes injury. Teeth designed for slicing at speed are vulnerable if they contact hard surfaces or armored prey incorrectly. Barracudas avoid such risks by targeting soft-bodied fish in open water. Precision is survival. As light shifts across the reef edge, the barracuda remains suspended, silver body catching and reflecting flashes of sunlight. Other fish skirt the area cautiously, accelerating briefly to pass through, then slowing once distance is regained. No strike occurs. None is needed. This is the barracuda's true dominance. Not pursuit, not violence, anticipation. On reefs, many fights are decided through endurance, intelligence, or strength. Barracuda fights are decided before they begin. Everything hinges on the first second. Barracuda fights are won in the first second. A tiger shark does not arrive like a weapon. It arrives like weather. The water ahead of it changes first. Subtle pressure shifts moving through the reef long before the body itself becomes visible. Fish react before they know why, tightening formations, abandoning feeding lanes, slipping into cover without panic but with urgency. Then the shark appears. Broad head cutting through blue water, body moving with a slow certainty that does not require speed to command attention. This is not a predator hunting in the conventional sense. It is a presence asserting itself through space. Tiger sharks are built for roaming, not dueling. Their bodies are large, thick through the midsection, and designed for endurance rather than bursts of acceleration. The head is wide, the jaws powerful, lined with serrated teeth capable of cutting through bone, shell, and cartilage. This capability is real, but it is not displayed recklessly. A tiger shark that bites unnecessarily risks damage to teeth, jaws, or sensory structures. In the ocean, that damage can be fatal over time. The shark knows this, not consciously, but through evolutionary arithmetic written into its behavior. As a result, tiger sharks resolve most conflicts without contact. The way they do this is through movement that communicates certainty. A tiger shark approaching another animal does not rush. It glides forward on a steady trajectory, body angled slightly, not directly head-on. This angled approach is important. It allows the shark to maintain visual awareness while signaling confidence rather than intent to strike. Predators that charge appear desperate. Predators that advance slowly appear in control. Other animals read this immediately. Large rays lift from the seabed and move away rather than holding ground. Turtles adjust direction long before the shark closes distance. Smaller sharks break off patrols and vacate the area entirely. Even apex predators avoid unnecessary proximity. The tiger shark does not chase these retreats. It does not need to. The space clears on its own. This is spatial dominance, not aggression. Body language plays a critical role. A tiger shark holds its pectoral fins level or slightly angled downward, a neutral to assertive posture that signals readiness without escalation. Sudden fin drops or exaggerated movements would indicate imminent attack, but these are rare. The shark prefers ambiguity, because ambiguity forces others to assume the worst. If another animal misreads the situation and lingers too long, the shark can escalate instantly, but escalation is an option, not a default. This restraint is rooted in survival math. In open water, there is no shelter, no safe recovery zone. A wounded animal bleeds energy with every movement. Infection spreads quickly. Hunting efficiency drops. For a roaming predator that must cover vast distances to feed, injury is catastrophic. Tiger sharks survive by staying intact, not by proving dominance through violence. Their size makes this strategy viable. Being large means fewer animals can challenge them physically. Being confident means fewer animals try. The shark leverages both without overspending either. It occupies feeding grounds, migratory corridors, and reef edges long enough to disrupt activity, then moves on. It does not defend territory permanently. It enforces it temporarily, repeatedly, and unpredictably. This unpredictability matters. Tiger sharks do not patrol fixed routes in the way reef predators do. They roam, crossing habitats from shallow reefs to open ocean and back again. This movement pattern prevents other animals from habituating fully. No place feels permanently safe. This keeps prey and competitors cautious everywhere the shark might appear. When a tiger shark does engage more closely, the interaction still follows the same logic. The shark passes alongside or beneath the other animal, close enough to assert scale and mass. The wake alone is often enough to trigger retreat. Water displaced by a body this large communicates force without contact. The message is physical, not visual. In rare cases where another animal does not retreat, the shark escalates in stages. Distance closes. Angle tightens. Speed increases slightly, not into a charge but into commitment. The other animal must decide quickly. Most choose to leave. The shark wins without biting. This approach extends even to interactions with large, potentially dangerous animals. Tiger sharks do not rush into confrontations with aggressive prey or competitors. They probe boundaries through movement and positioning, testing reactions. If resistance is strong, they disengage and move elsewhere. There is no shame in retreat when the cost outweighs the reward. Evolution does not reward pride. The shark's sensory systems support this decision-making. Electroreception allows detection of muscle activity and stress responses in other animals. Subtle changes in movement reveal intent. A fish preparing to flee feels different from one preparing to fight. The shark reads these signals long before contact would occur. This reduces the need for trial and error. Tiger sharks also exploit vertical space. By approaching from below or above rather than directly, they add another layer of pressure. The other animal must track movement in 3 dimensions while maintaining orientation. This cognitive load increases the likelihood of retreat. Again, no bite is required. The ecological impact of this behavior is profound. Tiger sharks act as regulators not by killing constantly, but by shaping behavior. Prey species alter foraging patterns, spending less time in exposed areas. Herbivores graze differently. Mid-level predators adjust patrol routes. These changes ripple outward, influencing reef health and population dynamics far beyond the shark's immediate presence. This is why tiger sharks are often described as ecosystem engineers, even though they do not build anything tangible. They engineer fear and uncertainty, and fear changes behavior. Behavior changes ecosystems. The irony is that this dominance looks calm. The shark does not thrash or display. It moves with what appears to be indifference. That indifference is exactly what makes it effective. An animal that looks unbothered by the presence of others implies it does not feel threatened. That implication carries weight. As daylight fades and the reef transitions into quieter rhythms, the tiger shark continues its patrol, passing through zones that moments ago were busy with feeding and movement. Now they are empty. The shark did not chase anyone away. It simply arrived. This is the final lesson of the tiger shark. In the ocean, fighting is expensive. The animals that survive longest are not those that seek conflict, but those that make conflict unnecessary. The scariest fighters do not look angry. they look certain. A great white shark rarely enters a scene abruptly. More often it materializes at the edge of perception, a pale shape resolving out of the blue water as if distance itself is being compressed. Its body moves with minimal effort, tail sweeping in slow, economical arcs that waste nothing. There is no urgency in the motion, no visible tension. Yet everything nearby responds. Fish alter course. Seals stop vocalizing. Space reorganizes quietly around the approaching mass. This is power without noise. Great white sharks sit at the apex of their ecosystems, not because they attack everything they encounter, but because their presence recalibrates risk for everything else. Their bodies are built for delivering catastrophic force, but that force is held in reserve. A great white that brawls recklessly would not remain an apex predator for long. Injury in the ocean is unforgiving. Wounds fester. Teeth break. Sensory organs are damaged. Hunting efficiency drops, and a predator that cannot hunt efficiently starves. This is why restraint is not weakness for a great white. It is survival strategy. The anatomy of a great white explains this balance immediately. The body is thick, muscular, and hydrodynamically optimized for burst speed rather than sustained pursuit. The caudal fin delivers immense thrust when required, but that thrust is metabolically expensive. The jaws are armed with large triangular teeth, edged with serrations capable of slicing through blubber, bone, and cartilage. These teeth are replaced over time, but replacement is not instant. A broken or lost tooth reduces feeding efficiency in the short term, and repeated damage compounds risk. Even more critical are the shark's sensory systems. Electroreceptors around the snout detect the faint electrical signals produced by muscle contractions and heartbeats. The lateral line senses pressure waves and movement. Vision is adapted for contrast and motion rather than detail. These systems work best when intact and unobstructed. Damage to the snout, eyes, or head during unnecessary conflict compromises the shark's ability to locate prey. For an animal that relies on precise timing and positioning, this is unacceptable. As a result, great white sharks avoid pointless fights. Instead, they dominate through display and pressure. When a great white approaches another large animal, it rarely charges immediately. The shark may pass at close range, deliberately angling its body to present full size and mass. This close pass is not accidental. It allows the other animal to assess scale and intent, while giving the shark an opportunity to read reaction. Does the animal flee? Does it hold position? Does it turn toward the shark or away? These responses matter. A fleeing animal signals vulnerability. An animal that holds ground signals confidence or desperation. The shark processes this information quickly, adjusting behavior without committing energy. This assessment phase often resolves the encounter entirely. Many animals retreat simply because the cost of staying has increased too much. Body posture reinforces this message. A great white maintains a level, steady orientation when asserting dominance. Erratic movement would indicate uncertainty. Sudden acceleration without contact, a powerful but controlled burst of speed, serves as escalation without collision. The water displacement alone communicates capability. The shark does not need to bite to prove it can. These displays are cheaper than combat. They cost less energy, carry less injury risk, and achieve the same outcome: control of space. The force potential behind these displays is what gives them credibility. A great white's bite is not just strong, it is decisive. One committed bite can remove limbs, disable prey instantly, or cause fatal blood loss. This potential is understood instinctively by other animals. Evolution has encoded caution around large sharks for millions of years. Even animals that have never encountered a great white behave differently when one appears. This effect extends beyond prey. Other predators adjust behavior as well. Smaller sharks alter patrol routes. Dolphins tighten formations or vacate areas. Even apex competitors avoid unnecessary proximity. No one benefits from testing a weapon that can end the interaction immediately. This is the wow moment of the great white. Its dominance is not expressed through constant violence, but through the knowledge that violence, if chosen, would be final. That knowledge shapes behavior long before teeth are involved. Energy management underpins every decision. Great white sharks are not hyperactive hunters. They spend long periods cruising, conserving energy, waiting for optimal conditions. When they do hunt, they often rely on ambush rather than pursuit, using vertical space to surprise prey from below. This tactic maximizes success while minimizing effort. A failed ambush is costly, but repeated failed pursuits are worse. This same logic applies to confrontations. The shark chooses interactions that offer clear advantage and avoids those that introduce uncertainty. Dominance through intimidation allows it to clear feeding areas, disrupt prey behavior, and reduce competition without expending the energy required for repeated attacks. The ecological consequences of this behavior are immense. Great whites shape ecosystems not just by what they eat, but by what they make others stop doing. Seals spend less time in open water. Fish alter migration timing. Scavengers adjust feeding patterns. These changes cascade through food webs, influencing everything from nutrient distribution to habitat use. This is known as a top-down effect, but it is driven by perception as much as predation. The great white does not need to remove large numbers of animals physically. It removes opportunities behaviorally. Fear becomes an ecological force. Even during actual feeding events, restraint is evident. Great whites often deliver exploratory bites rather than immediate killing strikes, particularly with unfamiliar prey. This behavior has been misunderstood as clumsiness or cruelty. In reality, it reflects caution. A test bite provides information without full commitment. If the prey is unsuitable or dangerous, the shark disengages. The cost of a single bite is lower than the cost of a prolonged struggle. This caution extends to interactions with large, potentially dangerous prey. Great whites do not rush into fights with animals capable of injuring them severely. They circle. They wait. They test. If conditions are not ideal, they leave. Apex status does not require proving dominance in every encounter. It requires surviving long enough to reproduce. The longevity of great whites reflects the success of this strategy. Individuals that avoid unnecessary damage live longer, grow larger, and exert greater influence over time. Size amplifies intimidation. Confidence compounds. The older the shark, the less it needs to fight. Observers often mistake this calm for indifference. In reality, it is control. A great white that appears relaxed is still evaluating, still calculating distances, angles, and energy costs. Nothing about its movement is casual. It is efficient. As the shark passes through a reef edge or coastal hunting ground, animals respond immediately. Feeding stops. Movement shifts. The environment quiets. The shark does not acknowledge this directly. It does not need to. The response confirms dominance more effectively than any bite could. This is the core truth of apex power in the ocean. Violence is not the default expression of strength. It is the last resort. The most powerful predators survive not by constant combat, but by making combat unnecessary. The great white embodies this principle completely. Its teeth, muscles, and speed are real, but they exist to support restraint, not replace it. Intimidation is cheaper than injury. Control is safer than chaos. As the great white fades back into the blue, its influence remains. Behavior does not snap back immediately. The memory of presence lingers. The ecosystem takes time to relax. That lingering effect is the real measure of power. Apex power is often expressed without constant violence. A seal in the water does not look like a fighter at first glance. The body is smooth and rounded, limbs reduced to flippers, movement fluid and almost effortless. It rolls, twists, and glides through the water with an ease that reads as playfulness to human eyes. The illusion is convincing, right up until another seal challenges it, or a predator enters the frame, and the tone shifts instantly. This is the middle of the food web, where survival demands speed, adaptability, and a willingness to escalate without hesitation. Seals live under constant pressure from both directions. Below them, fish and invertebrates scatter and flee. Above them, sharks and orcas hunt with lethal efficiency. There is no safe role here. A seal cannot afford to be purely aggressive nor purely evasive. It must switch between fighting and fleeing seamlessly, often within the same encounter. This dual requirement shapes every aspect of seal behavior and physiology. On land, seals gather at haul-out sites where the water meets rock, sand, or ice. These places are critical. They provide rest, warmth, and breeding opportunities, but they are also limited and crowded. Competition is unavoidable. When seals come ashore, they do not relax into safety. They enter a different arena where conflict is frequent and often brutal. Haul-out sites become battlegrounds of hierarchy. Dominant individuals claim the best positions, typically areas that offer quick access to water and protection from surf or wind. Subordinates are pushed to the margins, where exposure and risk increase. These boundaries are enforced physically. Seals bite, shove, and lunge at one another with surprising violence. Thick necks collide. Jaws snap shut around blubber. Bodies slam together with force amplified by mass rather than speed. These fights are rarely fatal, but they are not symbolic. Wounds accumulate. Scars tell stories of past challenges and lost contests. For males in breeding seasons, the stakes are especially high. Access to females depends on dominance, and dominance is maintained through repeated confrontation. Retreat signals weakness. Weakness invites challenge. The cycle feeds itself. What makes these encounters especially intense is that seals are not built like land mammals. Their bodies are optimized for water, not for stable footing. On land, they drag and heave, relying on momentum and weight rather than balance. This awkwardness increases the likelihood of injury. Yet the fights continue, because the cost of losing position is higher than the cost of pain. In water, the rules change again. Here, seals are transformed. The same body that looked clumsy on land becomes an instrument of agility. Seals can twist their spines, rotate their flippers, and roll their bodies with precision that rigid fish cannot match. This flexibility is not aesthetic. It is tactical. When seals fight underwater, the encounters resemble aerial dogfights more than wrestling matches. Individuals chase, turn sharply, and attempt to bite vulnerable areas such as flippers or necks. But unlike many fish, seals can bend and coil, slipping out of grips that would immobilize stiffer bodies. A shark that misses its initial bite finds itself facing an animal that can change direction instantly, using bursts of speed and tight turns to escape. This flexibility also defines how seals hunt. They pursue fish in 3 dimensions, adjusting trajectory mid-chase, herding prey against surfaces or into tight schools. The same movements that allow escape also enable pursuit. Fighting and feeding use the same physical toolkit. There is no separation between combat and foraging in a seal's life. Social interactions add another layer of complexity. Seals are not solitary by default. Many species live in groups, forming loose associations in water and dense aggregations on land. This sociality provides benefits, such as shared vigilance against predators, but it also increases competition. Food resources are finite. Space is limited. Hierarchies form quickly and are enforced continuously. Aggression within seal groups is not constant, but it is always possible. A seal that misjudges another's tolerance may find itself chased, bitten, or driven away. These encounters escalate rapidly because hesitation is dangerous. In the water, a distracted seal is vulnerable to predators. Fights must be decisive or brief. Prolonged struggles invite external threats. This is where seals' cognitive abilities become critical. Seals possess strong spatial memory and learning capacity. They remember which individuals dominate which spaces, which haul-out sites are contested, and which escape routes offer safety. They adjust behavior dynamically, avoiding unnecessary conflict when possible and engaging aggressively when required. Predator encounters reveal this adaptability most clearly. When a shark appears, seals do not panic blindly. They cluster, scatter, or dash for shallow water depending on context. Individuals may use erratic movement patterns to confuse tracking, twisting, and rolling unpredictably. In some cases, seals even harass smaller sharks, mobbing them briefly to create confusion before fleeing. This behavior is risky, but it reflects a willingness to fight when escape is uncertain. Against apex predators like orcas, however, the calculus changes. Here, seals rely almost entirely on speed and unpredictability. Direct confrontation is futile. The same flexibility that allows them to escape grips becomes their lifeline. They twist away from lunges, dart into kelp forests, or use shallow water where large predators lose maneuverability. Survival depends on reading the environment and switching tactics instantly. The cost of failure in these encounters is absolute. This reality feeds back into seal social dynamics. Individuals that survive longer gain experience. Experience shapes decision-making. Older seals often take fewer risks, choosing when to fight and when to flee more carefully. Younger seals test boundaries more aggressively and pay for mistakes through injury or death. This creates a harsh but effective selection process. Seals that cannot balance aggression and caution do not persist. Those that can become formidable survivors, capable of holding their own in a violent social structure while avoiding the worst outcomes of predation. The playful appearance of seals masks this constant tension. Rolling in waves, leaping from the water, and interacting with objects may look like leisure, but these behaviors also reinforce motor skills critical for survival. Play trains flexibility, coordination, and reaction speed. In a world where milliseconds matter, play is preparation. Even thermoregulation plays a role in conflict. Seals carry thick layers of blubber that insulate against cold, but also provide cushioning during fights. Blubber absorbs impacts and protects internal organs from bites. It is armor disguised as fat, a passive defense that reduces injury during inevitable collisions. This adaptation comes at a cost. Blubber increases buoyancy and drag, requiring more energy to move. Seals compensate with powerful muscles and efficient swimming techniques. Again, the theme emerges. Trade-offs managed through balance rather than specialization. As dusk approaches a haul out sight, the social order reasserts itself. Dominant seals claim central positions. Subordinates linger at edges, watching for openings. A sudden lunge sends one seal scrambling back toward the water. Another holds ground, jaws open, teeth bared. The conflict resolves without escalation, but the tension remains. In the water nearby, seals patrol feeding routes, chasing fish and watching shadows above. At any moment, the situation can flip. A playful chase can become a territorial dispute. A hunt can turn into a desperate escape. The seal must be ready for all of it. This is the defining challenge of life in the middle of the food web. Seals cannot rely on dominance alone, nor can they rely on avoidance alone. They must master both. They must be able to fight hard and flee fast, often in the same breath. Their bodies reflect this necessity. Flexible spines, strong jaws, rapid acceleration, thick blubber, sharp senses. None of these traits are accidental. Together, they form a toolkit for surviving constant uncertainty. The final lesson of the seal is not about cuteness or clumsiness. It is about adaptability under pressure. In ecosystems where danger comes from every direction, survival belongs to those who can change roles instantly. For seals, life is not about winning every fight. It is about knowing which fights to take, which to abandon, and how to escape the ones that turn bad. Survival demands you can fight and flee in the same breath. A walrus does not posture lightly. When one rises in the water or hauls its massive body onto ice or shoreline, the movement alone communicates weight, inertia, and refusal. This is not an animal designed for rapid escalation or retreat. It is built to hold ground. The body is immense, wrapped in thick layers of blubber that soften impact and insulate against cold. The skin itself is dense and scarred, often several centimeters thick, a living record of past confrontations. Nothing about a walrus suggests fragility, and nothing about its behavior contradicts that impression. Walrus conflict is rooted in access. Access to space on crowded haul-out sites, access to mates during breeding seasons, and access to status within tightly packed social hierarchies. These animals gather in large numbers, pressed together on ice floes or beaches where room is limited and tension is constant. There is no way to avoid contact entirely. Bodies touch, breath steams, tusks overlap in shared space. Under these conditions, dominance matters. Tusks define walrus combat before it begins. Long, curved, and unmistakable, they project forward from the skull as both weapon and warning. They are not hidden, not subtle, and not used casually. A walrus does not need to imagine what damage another could inflict. The threat is visible at all times. This visibility shapes behavior long before physical engagement occurs. Tusks serve multiple roles. They are used to haul the body out of water, to anchor against ice, and to manipulate the environment. In combat, they function as levers, prying tools, and stabbing implements. But perhaps more importantly, they function as signals. Size, symmetry, and wear all communicate information about age, health, and experience. A walrus with long, intact tusks advertises survival. A walrus with broken or shortened tusks advertises past losses or narrow escapes. Dominance interactions often begin with display rather than immediate violence. A walrus raises its head higher, inflating the throat pouch, presenting tusks fully. Vocalizations resonate through the water and air, low-frequency sounds that carry weight rather than melody. The body angle shifts to block space, forcing the opponent to either yield ground or escalate. These moments are tense, slow, and deliberate. No one rushes. Rushing invites injury. When fights do occur, they are not graceful. They are collisions between armored bodies. Walruses lunge forward with surprising force for animals of their size, slamming chests and shoulders together. Tusks clash, scrape, and sometimes lock. The goal is not precision. It is displacement. One animal attempts to push the other off balance, away from preferred space or access routes. The ground, whether ice or sand, shakes under the weight. The resilience of walruses defines these encounters. Thick blubber absorbs blows that would injure other mammals. Dense muscle layers protect vital organs. Even bites that penetrate skin often fail to incapacitate. Pain tolerance appears high, not because walruses are immune, but because retreat carries its own costs. Yielding ground can mean losing access to mates or being forced into more dangerous positions at the edges of haul-out sites, where predators and environmental stress increase risk. These battles can last minutes, sometimes longer, with both animals expending enormous energy. There is no quick resolution. Endurance matters. Stubbornness matters. Often the contest ends not with a dramatic victory, but with one walrus simply refusing to continue, turning away or sliding back into the water. The winner remains. The hierarchy updates silently. Scars accumulate across a walrus's body as a result of these encounters. Linear gouges from tusks, crescent-shaped bite marks, thickened skin around the neck and shoulders. These scars are not cosmetic. They influence future interactions. A heavily scarred walrus advertises experience. Others approach more cautiously, knowing this individual has survived repeated conflicts. Walrus combat also has a seasonal rhythm. During breeding periods, aggression intensifies as males compete for access to females. At other times, tolerance increases slightly, but dominance never disappears entirely. Even in calmer periods, minor skirmishes break out over resting space or movement pathways. The social structure remains dynamic, constantly reinforced through physical interaction. Despite their size and power, walruses do not seek unnecessary fights. Energy is finite, especially in cold environments where maintaining body heat is costly. Injuries heal slowly. A wounded walrus may struggle to forage effectively or defend itself. As with all large animals, survival favors those who balance aggression with restraint. But restraint in walruses looks different than it does in sharks or seals. It is not about avoidance or speed. It is about choosing when to stand and when to yield. Yielding is not weakness. It is strategy. A walrus that retreats today may return stronger, heavier, or with allies tomorrow. Memory plays a role. Individuals recognize each other across seasons, adjusting behavior based on past outcomes. The environment itself influences combat dynamics. On ice, footing is unstable. increasing the risk of falls and injuries. On land, gravity adds strain to already massive bodies. In water, buoyancy reduces weight, but introduces three-dimensional movement, where tusks and bodies can entangle unpredictably. Walruses adjust tactics accordingly, choosing where to engage based on perceived advantage. Predators are rarely involved directly in these fights, but their presence adds pressure. Polar bears, for example, watch haul-out sites carefully, targeting vulnerable individuals at the margins. A walrus forced away from central positions by losing a dominance contest may face increased predation risk. This external threat raises the stakes of internal conflict. Dominance is not just about mating, it is about survival. The primitive nature of walrus combat reflects its evolutionary roots. These animals descend from lineages shaped by ice, scarcity, and physical confrontation. Their bodies are solutions to ancient problems: how to endure cold, how to compete in crowded environments, how to survive without speed or stealth. The answer is mass, armor, and visible weaponry. There is no deception here, no camouflage, no feints. Walrus combat is honest in the most brutal sense. What you see is what you get. Big body, big tusks, big contest. As light fades across an Arctic haul-out, the sounds of the colony continue. Grunts, bellows, the scrape of tusks against ice. Somewhere within the mass, two males test boundaries again, pushing and bracing, neither willing to give ground easily. Around them, others watch, adjusting position slightly, aware that outcomes ripple outward. Eventually, one yields. The tension breaks, not with celebration, but with acceptance. The victor remains where it is, breathing heavily, tusks wet and scarred. The loser withdraws, carrying new marks that will shape future encounters. This is not cruelty. It is structure. In environments where resources are limited and bodies are slow to heal, clarity matters. Walrus combat provides that clarity through ritualized violence that resolves access without constant chaos. The final impression is not of elegance or intelligence, but of endurance. These animals persist because they can absorb punishment, deliver pressure, and survive the consequences. Their conflicts are not refined, but they are effective. Walrus combat is not strategy in the modern sense. It is something older. It is prehistoric theater. At the edge where water meets land, rules fracture. The open ocean gives way to shallows, rivers, estuaries, mangroves, and muddy banks where visibility collapses and movement slows. This is not a neutral zone. It is a trap. And crocodiles own it completely. A crocodile does not patrol. It waits. Its body lies half submerged, ridged back, breaking the surface like a line of wet stone, eyes and nostrils lifted just enough to function. Everything else disappears beneath the waterline. The animal becomes less a creature than a feature of the environment, another log, another shadow, another unmoving shape in a landscape already cluttered with deception. This stillness is not rest. It is readiness refined through millions of years of selection. Crocodiles do not want fights. They want outcomes. Their bodies are built around that philosophy. The skull is massive, reinforced to withstand crushing force. The jaws close with extraordinary pressure, driven by muscles designed for power rather than speed. Opening the mouth requires far less force than closing it, which is why crocodiles rarely hold their jaws open for display. They do not threaten. They seize. The teeth are not slicing tools. They are conical, interlocking spikes designed to grip and hold rather than cut. This design confuses those who expect sharp edges to be the mark of lethality. Crocodiles do not need to slice. Once they have purchase, the physics of water does the rest. The ambush begins long before contact. Crocodiles choose positions where prey movement is constrained. River crossings, narrow channels, drinking edges, and shallow shorelines where footing is unstable. These places funnel animals into predictable paths. Fish, mammals, birds, even other predators must pass through these zones to survive. The crocodile does not chase them there. It waits for them to arrive. When the strike happens, it is explosive but brief. A sudden surge from stillness, jaws snapping shut around a limb, snout, or body. There is no warning posture, no escalation. Surprise is the advantage. The goal is not to injure. It is to attach. Once attached, the fight is already over. This is where the crocodile's true weapon emerges: leverage. The animal does not attempt to overpower prey through sustained force alone. It uses its own mass, the resistance of water, and rotational momentum to dismantle resistance efficiently. The death roll is not a frenzy. It is a calculated mechanical solution to a problem. By rotating its body rapidly while holding prey, the crocodile generates torque that tears tissue, dislocates joints, and destabilizes the victim's orientation. In water, where resistance multiplies force, this rotation becomes devastating. Muscles strain against currents they cannot counter. Limbs twist beyond functional limits. The prey loses structure, not through cutting, but through physics. This is why size matters less than position once the roll begins. A smaller crocodile with good purchase and room to rotate can defeat prey much larger than itself. Leverage replaces strength. Control replaces contest. Drowning follows naturally. Crocodiles do not need to crush airways or cause immediate trauma. They pull prey beneath the surface, holding it there while oxygen depletes. Panic accelerates exhaustion. Struggle burns remaining reserves. The water itself becomes an accomplice. The crocodile expends minimal additional energy, letting time and environment finish the job. This approach is brutally efficient. It minimizes risk. There is no prolonged exchange of blows. No chance for counterattack once control is established. The crocodile avoids injury not by being invulnerable, but by denying the opponent any meaningful opportunity to fight back. Territory is central to this strategy. Crocodiles are not generalists roaming randomly. They establish control over specific stretches of water, learning currents, depths, and escape routes intimately. Every submerged branch, every sandbank, every eddy becomes part of a mental map. This knowledge allows precise positioning and timing. The environment is weaponized through familiarity. Other animals learn these territories quickly. Crossing points become known dangers. Drinking sites are approached cautiously. Some species alter migration routes entirely to avoid crocodile-dominated zones. Fear reshapes landscapes long before an ambush occurs. Even other apex predators respect these boundaries. Large cats hesitate at water edges. Sharks avoid shallow, murky zones where crocodiles patrol. The overlap between saltwater crocodiles and marine predators reveals a hierarchy defined not by size alone, but by environmental control. In shallow, complex waters, the crocodile holds the advantage. Crocodile conflicts with each other follow similar principles. Dominance disputes occur over territory and mates, but they rarely escalate into chaotic violence. Displays involve body positioning, jaw slaps against the water surface, and low-frequency vocalizations that travel through water and ground. These signals communicate size and intent clearly. Physical clashes happen, but they are controlled and usually brief. Injuries are costly even among armored bodies. Armor matters here. Crocodile skin is reinforced with osteoderms, bony plates embedded within the dermis that provide protection against bites and impacts. This natural armor absorbs force and distributes pressure, reducing injury during confrontations. Combined with thick muscle layers, it allows crocodiles to endure collisions that would cripple other reptiles. But armor alone does not define crocodile dominance. It is patience. Crocodiles can wait for hours, days, even weeks, conserving energy while monitoring activity. Their metabolism allows extended fasting. They do not need frequent success to survive. One well-timed ambush can sustain them for long periods. This reduces urgency and prevents reckless behavior. This patience extends to prey selection. Crocodiles do not attack everything that moves. They choose moments when success is nearly guaranteed. A distracted animal, a struggling swimmer, a crossing at low water. This selectivity is what makes encounters so lethal when they do occur. The crocodile strikes when conditions align perfectly. The psychological effect of this hunting style is profound. Animals that survive near crocodile territory behave differently. They hesitate. They cluster. They rush crossings. These behaviors increase stress and energy expenditure, altering feeding efficiency and reproduction. The crocodile's influence extends far beyond the animals it kills. This is ambush dominance in its purest form. Control through certainty. Violence compressed into moments. Risk externalized onto the environment and the victim. There is no fairness here. Crocodiles do not engage in contests of speed, strength, or skill. They deny those contests entirely. The fight is decided before it begins through positioning, timing, and ownership of space. As dusk settles over a riverbank, the water surface smooths. Insects hum. Birds call. Somewhere beneath the surface, a crocodile remains motionless, eyes just breaking the waterline. Nothing moves near it. Not because it is visible, but because the memory of its presence lingers. This is the final truth of crocodile dominance. It does not rely on spectacle. It relies on inevitability. In the margins of the ocean, where land and water blur and escape routes vanish, the rules change. They become crocodile rules.